Welcome to the Leadership Buzz with Lloyd Buzz Buzzle. Buzz is an International Coaching Federation, ACC credentialed coach, DISC practitioner, and retired Air Force officer with 37 years of leadership experience. This podcast is for leaders who want to align behavior with values and grow in self-awareness. Each episode features one book, one idea, one story, and 3 coaching questions to reflect on your leadership. Work hard. Tell the truth. Here's Buzz. Let's roll.
Welcome back to the Leadership Buzz. I'm Buzz Buzzell. Today we're talking about something I've always believed. Leaders are readers. I have always loved books as long as I can remember, even as a kid. I love that books give us the chance to learn from people we never met, places we'll never go, and experiences we may never have ourselves. Great books can challenge us, stretch us, and prepare us for moments we have not faced yet. TJ is going to fill us in on the main piece we are using today, but we're going to talk about several books and why reading matters so much for leaders. TJ, tell us more.
Leaders are readers is more than just a catchy phrase. On this episode of the Leadership Buzz, Buzz discusses General James Mattis's well-known letter on professional reading and why leaders who want to grow cannot afford to stop learning. Mattis wrote that when leaders do not read, they are forced to learn only through their own experience, often the hard way. But reading gives us the chance to learn through the successes and failures of others before we face those same challenges ourselves. He said reading lights what is often a dark path ahead and keeps leaders from being caught flat-footed. Over to you, Buzz.
We're going to cover several books, but before I do that, before I jump into these books, I think almost every leadership lesson comes back to 3 simple ideas. First is trust. People do their best work when they feel safe, supported, and trusted. Second is service. Leadership is about putting others ahead of yourself in order to fulfill a vision. Then third, of course, I think, is truth. I think strong leaders tell the truth, take responsibility, and align their behavior with their values. Those 3 ideas show up in almost every great leadership book I've ever read, and they have shaped the way I've led in the military, the way I coach today, and the way I try to live my life. I've been pretty excited about this episode because I'm a huge reader, and I just love books. I've always loved books. I grew up working in a bookstore. I worked in a library as a page. That's like putting away books. I just love being around books and reading books. And I have a lot of books in my library and in my house. And we're going to kind of focus a little on Call Sign Chaos by Jim Mattis and Bing West. They wrote a book together about Jim Mattis and his life and about how he views leadership. But in that book, it talks about reading and the necessity of reading to be able to be a great leader. And in Appendix B of that book, it talks about his letter, his email that he replied to somebody, just about his vision of reading. And so I'm going to read that part to you. And in the run-up to Marine General James Mattis, who later became the Secretary of Defense deployment to Iraq in 2004, a colleague wrote to him asking about the importance of reading and military history for officers, many of them who found themselves too busy to read. His response went viral over email. Security blog Strife out of King's College in London published Mattis's words, and their title for the post, With Rifle and Bibliography, General Mattis on Professional Reading. Now, I'm not going to cover this whole thing, and I'm not going to go through every book that he wrote into the appendix, but you can read that in the back of the book, or you can go to the blog. So I'll just characterize the problem, part of that. The problem with being too busy to read is that you learn by experience, or by your men's experience, that is the hard way. By reading, you learn through other experiences, generally a better way to do business, especially in our line of work, where the consequences of incompetence are so final for young men. Thanks to my reading, I have never been caught flat-footed by any situation, never at a loss for how any problem has been addressed, successfully or unsuccessfully, before. It doesn't give me all the answers, but it lights what is often a dark path ahead. We have been fighting on this planet for 5,000 years, and we should take advantage of their experience. Winging it and filling body bags as we sort out what works reminds us the moral dictates and the cost of incompetence in our profession. As commanders and officers, we are coaches and sentries for how our units and how can we coach anything if we don't know a hell of a lot more than just the tactics, techniques, and procedures. What happens when you're on a dynamic battlefield and the things are changing faster than higher headquarters can stay abreast of it? Do you not adapt because you cannot conceptualize faster than enemy's adaptation? This is very important and part of the concept of what General Mattis talked about. How can you be a sentinel and not have your unit caught flat-footed if you don't know what the warning signs are, that your unit's preps are not sufficient for the specifics of a tasking that you are not anticipating? The enemy has paid a price when I had the opportunity to go against them, and I believe that many of my young guys lived because I didn't waste their lives, because I didn't have the vision in my mind of how to destroy the enemy, at least cost to our guys and to the innocents on the battlefields. Hope this answers your questions, and I will let my staff know and add all these books to that list. There are several books that I wanted to capture today, and amongst these books are his own book, Call Sign Chaos, by Jim Mattis. And Chaos is his call sign. I'll let you read the book, and you can see on YouTube a little more about it. But the military story suggestion is it talks about how reading history and leadership books shaped your own approach and his approach to command and coaching. So what I want to emphasize is that, General Mattis was a military Marine and led men and then became the Secretary of Defense. But I think reading affects just about everything in life. And that whether you're a business person, entrepreneur, run your own business, whether you manage people or you work with people, I think reading can enlighten you and bring forth things that you'll never experience in life. And you don't live long enough to be able to do that. And that's exactly what General Mattis was trying to emphasize in his book and his letter, is you'll be able to gain a lot more information and a lot more experience by reading. And, I love reading, so I'm biased with it anyway. I wanted to highlight several books, but I'm going to try and group them together and move through these kind of quickly. But there's 3 books on Vietnam POWs that I just thought were amazing. The very first book I read on the POW situation was General Robbie Reisner's book, The Passing of the Night. There's a very short book about the character of the person, the experience there. The other 2 books that I read were 2,801 Days in Hanoi by Larry Garino, and then, of course, Colonel Lee Ellis, Engaged with Honor. And he's written several books, and you can find him on LinkedIn and Facebook. And I really recommend his books. They're just amazing, and he's a great leader. These 3 books, and I've met 2 of the individuals. And I didn't meet Colonel Garino, but they're just amazing when you think about character and how leaders should act in different situations and high quality, high critical situations. The reason I emphasize those POW books is that I often size myself up against those men that were in a camp where everything was taken away from them and they had to return to their values and rely on their teammates. And I know that's an extreme situation to look back on, but I just think it's an amazing what they went through and how they survived that and were leaders at the same time. In the same way, the Holocaust survivors, there was 2 of them. I read their books that I thought were amazing. The Happiest Man on Earth by Eddie Jaku, and of course, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Those 2 books really gave a holistic type of experience to what they went through and to how they bring forth character and helping each other through those camps. And I think I may have told you the past of the Kind Bar with David Lubitsky, and how he produced the Kind Bar because his dad sat him down at the kitchen table when he was very young, and he explained to him that he'd been in a concentration camp in the Holocaust, and by doing those small kind gestures, that got people through by helping each other. And that's why he named the bar Kind Bar. And I try and keep one with me all the time, so when I see somebody doing something kind, I give them that one. And I try and relate that story to them, and it's very impacting. And I try and kind of look for those kind gestures in our society. Viktor Frankl's book really does talk about surviving those concentration camps and argues that people can endure almost anything if they have meaning and purpose. And what that does is that meaning gives people strength. And when leaders help people connect their work to a deeper purpose, they can endure difficulty, uncertainty, and setbacks. And I think that's where we as leaders can have a real great impact on our teams, both personally and professionally. There's a couple of great sports books that you may or may not have read before. One of them is The Legacy by James Kerr, and the other one's The Hard Hat by John Gordon. The Legacy is about the All Blacks rugby team, and it really focuses on culture, humility, discipline, and teamwork, while The Hard Hat by John Gordon is inspired by a lacrosse player from a college. And it really highlights great teammates that do invisible work, that they often remember the people who encouraged them, showed up every day, and held everyone together. And I love the Legacy book by James Kerr because it really highlights a lot of books that I love. And that when I was reading it, I couldn't believe that they mentioned these books, and I was just reading them or had them in my library. And really, it helps great leaders think beyond themselves and focus on what they are building for the next generation. Hey, before we get finished today, I wanted to mention for this episode, if you have some favorite books or some leadership books that you think you'd like to share, hey, go ahead and drop them in the comments or send me a message or reach out to me on LinkedIn. I would love to hear what books that you all value, and I'll probably be putting something out tomorrow with some list of books and maybe some books that we can share with each other. So please don't be afraid to reach out, and I'd love to hear what books you find valuable in your leadership journey and why you might think those are important. And I'd probably be remiss not to mention The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. It's a book that I've given to several leaders, and it's really a story, but it illustrates relationships and trust. And a new leader walks into an environment. It's told in a story type format. I mean, it's as described by the author as a compelling fable with a simple yet powerful message for those who strive to have exceptional team leaders. And I just love it because it really is all about relationships, and because life is built on relationships, and all relationships are built on one thing. That one thing is trust. Everything in life, whether you're building a relationship with a family member, a husband, wife, friend, parent, everything is based on trust. And that's what this book is kind of based on. And I think you'd love that book if you picked it up. Hey, one great book also, I think, is The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle, and really explores how people develop talent through repetition, coaching, and deliberate practice. You know, repetition builds confidence, and great performance often comes from preparation and practice, not just natural ability alone. I mean, I saw this in our ICBM missile training, where we use checklists and inspections and simulator work, where repetition helped build people performing under pressure, because often you're asked to do things in a time-based manner as something that you'd never experienced or seen before. And it took people from varying different academic backgrounds in different parts of the country and put them together to build great performance and great teams. And I think this book, The Talent Code, really illustrates that you can bring that out in your teams.
Buzz, your final thoughts today on leaders or readers?
Hey, today I was talking about several different leadership books and a key concept from many of them. But honestly, the bigger message underneath all of it is that leaders have to keep learning. The books themselves are really just examples of a larger point, and the books that I like, they might not be the ones that you like. It matters because it helps leaders prepare before they face that challenge. The leaders who read are less likely to get caught flat-footed, like General Mattis talks about. That gives perspective, it exposes us to other people's mistakes and other people's successes, and helps us recognize patterns faster. It builds judgment. It's just not about gathering information. It's about becoming more thoughtful, adaptable, and more prepared to lead when pressure comes. I saw that in the military from time after time. These leaders who studied, reflected, and kept learning usually made better decisions and led people better than the leaders who relied only on instinct or experience. Leaders are readers because reading helps us think better, lead better, and avoid learning every lesson the hard way.
Let's get to this week's 3 coaching questions for our listeners.
Hey, for the coaching questions this week, a little different episode we had today, but what book or article or experience has shaped the way you lead most, and why? How did that make you feel when you read that book? How did that affect you, and why did that affect you? 2, where might you be relying too much on your own experience instead of learning from others who have gone before you, and how does that look in your life? Is there some way you could read more or experience more through some type of reading that might help you? And finally, if you committed to reading with more purpose, what leadership challenges in your life might you could help handle a little better? How would that look for you if you were doing that, just a hair better? Hey, I've always loved books and reading, but one thing I stumbled into over the years was the Pulitzer Prize winning books. It started when I picked up a book about Boston. It ended up being a Pulitzer Prize winner, and even though it was a long book, it was incredibly easy to read because it was just so well written. That got me curious. I went back and started looking through a list of Pulitzer Prize winners over the years and began reading more of them. What I found was that many of these books were on topics I normally would not have picked up on my own. History, politics, biographies, war, culture, different places and people. But because they were all so well written, they pulled me in. I learned a lot from these books, and I probably never would have chosen otherwise. I think there's a lesson in that for leaders. Sometimes the best books are not always the ones sitting in the leadership section of the bookstore. Sometimes the best lessons come from history, literature, biography, or books about places and people very different from us. So if you're looking for something new to read, I would encourage you to take a look at Pulitzer Prize winners. There's all kinds of topics, and you may be surprised by what grabs your attention and what you learn from it.
Leaders Are Readers reminds us that leadership is not only built through experience, it is also built through learning from others who have gone before us. Reading gives leaders perspective, judgment, and a chance to see patterns before they face them in real life. General Mattis believed that leaders who do not read are forced to learn everything the hard way. The best leaders stay curious, keep learning, and never stop growing. Back to you, Buzz.
Thanks for listening to The Leadership Buzz. If you enjoyed today's episode, share it with someone else who cares about leadership. You can follow me on LinkedIn or visit workhardtellthetruth.com for more leadership content and updates. And if this episode made you stop and think, take one idea from it and put it into practice this week. Until next time, keep leading, keep serving, work hard, and tell the truth.